Porter is a surname shared by many Anishinaabe families connected to White Earth Reservation and other Ojibwe reservations in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Many Porter families can trace their history to a man named Duane Porter, who, in the 1840s, came from New York to the territory which later became Minnesota. Our cousins, who are descendants of Lizzie Goodwin Shepherd, or Ma Shepherd as most of us called her, can trace their history from Ma to her mother, Melinda Porter Goodwin Duffy, to her parents, Duane and Mary Porter. In a previous video in this series, we learned about the family of Duane and Mary Porter. In this video, we will explore Duane's origins and answer the question, who is Duane's father? In the 1840s, Duane Porter arrived in the territory which later became Minnesota and married Munnie or Mary LaPrairie and settled with his wife's family, the LaPrairies, in the village of Chengwatana in Pine County. Of course, when Duane Porter arrived, Minnesota did not look like this. It looked more like this, with land east of the Mississippi in Wisconsin Territory and land west of the Mississippi in Iowa Territory. A young Duane Porter is listed with the small population at Snake River Precinct in 1849, the year Minnesota became its own territory. In 1850, Duane Porter is again in Snake River Precinct, now listed with his wife's family, the LaPrairies. Clues to Duane Porter's origins can be found in Folsom's 50 Years in the Northwest. Folsom writes, Duane Porter, the son of a surgeon in the United States Army in the War of 1812, was born in Washington County, New York in 1825, came west as far as Illinois in 1852, and to St. Croix Falls in 1844. He was married in 1848 to Mary LaPrairie, and in the same year located at Chengwatana. His occupation is that of an explorer and lumberman. He has 10 children living. So Duane Porter is 25 years old when he is listed with the LaPrairies on the 1850 census, and Folsom reports he is from Washington County, New York. 1850 is the first U.S. census which lists the names of all members of the household, and when searching Washington County for Duane's family, we find at least 43 Porters in Washington County in 1850. In 1840, when Duane Porter would have been 15 years old and likely living with his father, only the names of the heads of household are listed on the U.S. Census, with counts for children and other adults. In 1840, there are at least 12 Porter heads of household in Washington County, and intriguingly, one of them is named Nelson. You may recall from a previous video in this series that Duane Porter named 2 of his sons Nelson. But without a baptism record or other documentation, how can we be sure which household is Duane's? Fortunately, we find a bit of luck within the census records. Looking again at the Duane and Mary Porter family on the 1885 Minnesota census, we notice a 64-year-old, New York-born John D. Porter in the household. John is only 4 years older than Duane. Could this be his brother? Searching Washington County in 1860, we find a John D. Porter of about the right age living in Whitehall with his wife Caroline. But what we need is to find John D. with his father. Searching a decade earlier, we find what we are looking for. John D. is living in the household of Nelson and Lydia Porter in Whitehall, Washington, New York, and Nelson is a physician. You may recall that Folsom reported that Duane Porter's father was a surgeon in the War of 1812. A War of 1812 pension application index shows Nelson's widow, Lydia, applied for his pension and gives Nelson's service as surgeon under General Scott. Military minutes of the Council of Appointments of the state of New York show that Nelson first served as a surgeon's mate and later as a surgeon. The history of Washington County, New York, gives this account of Dr. Porter. Nelson Porter, M.D., was born at Fort Anne in 1793. He studied medicine with the eminent surgeon Dr. Valentine Mott, with whom he remained 5 years, enjoying the hospital privileges afforded by the city of New York. In 1817, he returned to Fort Anne, established himself in practice, and rapidly gained a high reputation as a surgeon. In 1837, he removed to Whitehall, where he continued until his death in 1852. Dr. Porter was an excellent physician, and his reputation as a surgeon has never been surpassed in the county. During the last 8 years of his life, his health was such that he could only respond to the frequent calls made upon him as a consultant. He was a man of splendid presence, standing 6 feet and 3 inches high, and weighing in his prime 350 pounds. He was genial and social, had many attached friends, and was universally respected and mourned. Census records support the history of Washington County account. We find Nelson Porter in Fort Anne in 1820, again in Fort Anne in 1830, and in Whitehall in 1840. Death notices give Dr. Nelson Porter's death in Whitehall at age 59 on the 1st of April, 1852. We will likely never know if Duane returned to New York at the time of his father's death, but it is curious that Folsom gives Duane's arrival in Illinois in 1852, 8 years after his arrival in St. Croix Falls. Dr. Nelson Porter is buried in the Fort Anne Cemetery in the village of Fort Anne, New York. His grave is located to the right of the road, and the back of the gravestone faces the road. His stone is sinking into the ground, but it still clearly displays the date of his death, April 1st, 1852. In this video, we answered the question, who is Duane's father? In the next video in this series, we will answer, who is Duane's mother?